So IPK and then correctives to go with the IPK. We're going to start with Michelle's kind of upper limb. So thinking about shoulder. From the movement sins, the 7 movement sins, probably the most obvious one you'll remember was that row. So we'll watch Michelle do a bit of a row. We'll make sure she's kind of doing it as commonly a client would, which is with some of what we call this sort of lurching movement, where the scapula is coming forward or the point of the shoulder is going forward instead of following the elbow. Great, and release down again. Good, and then as she pulls, she's doing it badly. So this is a really hard habit to fix with clients, okay? That shoulder should be, of course, great. She should be kind of gently sitting there, right? So as she's pulling, all those muscles at the back there, the upper traps, middle traps, lower traps, are really helping the pulling movement rather than inhibited and unable to help in this position. Great. So that's the kind of movement sin we're talking about. Relax the suspension trainer. The screen train, that's probably most relevant. You know, it's kind of open to interpretation, but let's go for the airport controller. Great, so making sure that arm is resting on her legs there. She's kind of got her spine in a little bit of a rounded position so we can't cheat through the spine. Then what we're looking for here is to see how tight is her shoulder, how close does she get to the alignment of her spine, kind of as if she was doing overhead press. And she's pretty good. Let's do the second one. If you can remember the one where the arm comes to here, Michelle, and then you rotate as far as you can, keeping that elbow nice and high. She's great. She's also really mobile on that one. All right, but if that hurts, or if that's really kind of stuck, or the client's dropping their elbow, they're not keeping it up and opening well, then you can be assured the front of that shoulder, pec major or pec minor, are actually pulling and blocking that movement. Okay, so while she's actually really good, we're just going to work with imagining she's got a really tight pec or a dominant pec minor, as you learn in Rehab Express on day, whatever, module 2 of MRC. All right, so Michelle, lying on your side. Actually, no, lying on your back. There's a few different ways to do it. Okay, so like, I'll be here at the foot of your head. So what Michelle's going to do is going to keep her knees together. And then while I've got the pressure here with the kettlebell, with the handle of the kettlebell, it's quite perfectly shaped for this. Or if you're doing Rehab Express, of course, tomorrow you'd be using your Posture Pro. So you'll learn about that in the future. Keeping those knees together, you then rotate as far as you can, giving a bit of a stretch on this front chest area. Okay, so come back, gently, gently. I'm going to rest this just off the bone into that meaty part of the chest muscle, and just gently kind of pin her to the ground so she can't lift that shoulder. Off you go. That's great. Encourage the client to go as far as they can without it being, you know, super painful, but it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable in a hopefully satisfying kind of way. And then oscillate gently at the limit of the movement there. Just kind of pulse to really force that area to open and to release its tension. That's great. So you might do kind of 3 sets of 10 of those pulses. It's a nice little number to aim for. Great. Hopefully there's no kind of strange feelings or aches and pains or pins and needles or anything like that. If there is, then you just got to pull out, give the client a break, and get them to restore their blood flow or restore nerve kind of conduction properly. All right, so that's our kettlebell myofascial release. Now if I get you to lie on your side, facing that way. The alternative was a PNF technique with the power bag or the sandbag, and it's extremely good to follow up this. You know, just seeing where I'm going to be here. So in this situation, I am making sure that we kind of give a bit of support to her spine so she doesn't rotate her spine too much. If I had something for her neck or her head, I'd put that under there, but that's okay. Then we're going to just let her shoulders sit comfortably here. Now this is a PNF, you remember. So once we've got this little bit of pressure, gently stretching her open, I'm going to get her to push against it. Is that all right?
Yep.
Comfortable with that? So from the point of her shoulder, she's pushing forward, just holding that kind of against the resistance of the weight of the bag. You know, like a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. When she relaxes, we just let that weight sink her further into that stretching position for probably a count of 5 or 6 again. And you can do that little, that little combo of contract, 5, 6 seconds, and release, 5, 6 seconds. You can do that a few times through, as many as you want, then bring it off and just check that she's kind of doing okay down there, and that mobility sort of feels like it's improved. And that opening ability of the chest there is better, all right? Okay, so after you've done those two kind of loosening things, then what I'd like to do is just go through a bit of stretch. We're going to do a bit of a stretch. So we've now done our loosening techniques using kettlebell, using the power bag. We're now going to do some stretches with a suspension trainer. Be very careful with pec stretching. I do really implore you to listen to what your clients are telling you about how their shoulders feel. If they feel like they're getting like a blockage inside, or it's like something's jammed, or they're feeling it around the back, it's not okay. We really need to make sure that stretch is happening right where you want it to be, or else there is some blockage, some jamming going on inside their ball and socket joint, and that'll aggravate a shoulder problem, guaranteed. All right, Michelle, so the first one we're going to do is our kind of most, you could say, risky pec stretch. So your client should have good shoulders for this one. All right, just getting our length right. Elbows are nice and high as we lean in, split stance. And again, where do you feel it? That's the key question. If she's at all feeling it anywhere behind or on top, we have to modify it. We've got to do it differently. Only if she's feeling it really satisfyingly stretching on that pec muscle are we good to go. And that is a great quick stretch of both sides to really open that chest. Very hard to beat if we don't have any shoulder problems. If we've got shoulder problems, the kind of way to get around that is to do our little twisty, funny one that you got to practice or you will forget it, because it's kind of like a little, where does that bit go again? Good, so we hook it in with the opposite hand. We're going to stretch the right hand side. And then we hook it in around the opposite side and then use the strap to really wrench that shoulder open. Now that feels pretty vigorous, but it's extremely safe for the shoulder. As long as it's kind of hooked, you might even twist your whole body that way. Just got to jiggle it, work so the client feels like it's definitely safely sort of not going to slip off and it's doing the right job. So a little bit of just getting the client used to, it should really pull your shoulder open. Okay, so that's probably a little more pec minor, that one, because the arm is down by the side. Now, if we're going to take the arm up, again, the strap on the front is really going to open the chest, and that's the key component, getting that chest opening so the shoulder doesn't jam inside the socket. Again, that should feel like a really kind of low, deep pec stretch. That's all you want. And you can lean into it with your body weight. Fantastic as a kind of a way around a shoulder that's got a bit of impingement or has got a bit of pain, all right? So now that we've done our loosening, getting in there, sort of doing stuff to our client, as well as teaching them how to stretch, getting a good sort of 3 or 4 lots of 10 or 20 seconds, really stretching open that chest. Then let's now try and integrate some of that real rowing movement, starting with a more kind of isolation kind of exercise, all right, Michelle? We've got our lower trap isolation. I really rate this one for avoiding cheating in the client's movement. I'll grab my dowel while she sets up. So, we've got the strap hooked in her forearm. It should be kind of comfortable. Other hand gently holds the wrist, and then she's away. You're just coaching your client to gently pull that scapula, pull that shoulder back and gently down. Doesn't have to be too forceful. They don't have to lean too far. Like, it's not a heavily loaded strength exercise. It's a more carefully kind of thought out isolation, brain training kind of drill rather than a strength thing. At least, for the first chapter of practicing. It's good. Keep that elbow nice and high. That's a little key. Okay, let it all fall back for me. Yeah, so it goes into protraction. Keep the elbow high now, and then pull just with here. Because it is a common error to pull the elbow down as we're trying to pull. That probably just works too much lats and teres major. So keep that elbow high and just sink it back. All right, checking that she's nice and soft here. It's good. Upper trap should be loose. Brilliant. She's doing a great job. And if you really felt, you could probably feel it's all really hard and strong and firing off down here in this lower trap area. The only other little cheat thing to watch out for is too much arching of the spine. So you don't want your client to arch. It's got to be the shoulder doing it. Do it as a repeat movement, 3 or 4 sets of 10. Although if you're doing it as a warm-up, I probably wouldn't do it too much. You're in danger of fatigue of the area. So really maybe just 3 sets of 5, for example, just to really get the client's brain attentive to this proper retraction technique. All right, so then we could even get in straight away and do some row movement and try and encourage that better technique. Good. Now relax your scapula, that's it. I don't mind those scaps coming around a little bit. That's kind of ultimately, functionally quite a very good thing for the shoulders. And then just really drive from the shoulders, then use your arms as well. Cool, and then release. If you would ask my opinion, she's doing a brilliant job. But I also really rate doing the row with your elbow a little bit away from your body, not tucked in too tight. It actually makes it harder to not do the lurch. So Michelle, if you try with your elbows a little bit further away, it may feel harder from a muscle point of view, but actually makes it a more true technique quicker. Keeping the elbow close, it's very easy for that to drop forward. Keeping it away, it's a little bit harder. Great. Cool. And again, we're just watching the client doesn't arch their backs too much. And then we're just going through that movement, or, adding in leg stuff as well, or just holding it, all of it. You're just emphasizing this beautiful retraction that she's doing. Even like squeeze this little dowel, or squeeze my fingers here gently, that kind of stuff to really help open that chest. Great work. Can you remember the reverse butterfly? So we're kind of progressing it up a little bit in terms of complexity. We might even add a little bit of like a deadlift with some upright row in just a moment with the power bag. But let's do the reverse butterfly, a nice little tricky exercise that adds all of this retraction in together. So the straps go on that kind of above your elbow. Yeah, hands behind head, supporting your head. Lean a little bit. And just give the client a chance even just to kind of go, okay, how's this going to feel? That's right. Now, opening those elbows backwards or closing them backwards. Lovely. And release. Okay, she's making it look easy. This is a tough drill because you're using all of upper traps, middle traps, and lower traps. They're all designed to be a part of this movement, even rhomboids, everything else. Lats probably won't work that hard. I think they'll be pretty relaxed. It's really all of those retraction muscles of the scapula. Some external rotator cuff work probably is inevitable. It's great for the posture, like you're really having to work on your posture. So the reverse butterfly is a brilliant kind of daily exercise for someone who's your classic kind of hunched over cameraman or whatever. So this is a reverse butterfly, I really rate it. All right, let's do some upright rows. I might get you in that deadlift position, Michelle, and we're just going to watch you kind of just to, see how this applies to other movements, doing an upright row in your deadlift position. You want to give that a quick go, side on. So that's great. So she's got a really good position here. And then we're just going to row and applying the same rule to this. So really thinking about opening through those scapula and then release and let them stretch a little. Good. A little bit of, again, something good about that. A little bit of stretch as if you're going to reach for the ground to grab something. Then we just gently synergize the pinching and the arms coming back and release. If your client is taking their elbows too far back and they're gone back to their lurching habit, just tell them, don't get those elbows, they don't have to go as high. Drive with here. This is your strength. This is where your force comes from. The arms come after. Don't drive from the shoulder and from the arms. Drive from here. Great. And don't forget how taxing this is on the lower back, all right? So, you might have 5 reps and then give it a break. And hopefully they are kind of squeezing their glutes a little bit and trying to be a bit active in there. They're not kind of hanging and sagging into their hips and kind of getting jammed up there. So watch that. Bit of a complicated drill. Back to the injury prevention screen. We're now going to focus on more that push movement, okay? So with the push movement, there is that real imperative for the rotator cuff to work well in conjunction with that really important pushing muscle of your shoulder. Can you name it? His name is serratus anterior, also known as the boxer's muscle because of the importance of when you box, that scapula coming forward and helping the connection of the fist into the bag or the opponent. So serratus works really well with the rotator cuff. So a lot of people with problems on push, vertical push or forward push, you look at their serratus, it's not functioning well, but also they're getting some impingement stuff going on inside their ball and sockets. That's a classic little combo. So from our movement sins, we might get Michelle to do a little bit of some push-ups, and you might see that lurching. So if you're leaning into the leaning into the suspension trainer, the same sort of thing as with the pull, you might see that kind of lurching going on. So as she's dropping down, the shoulder will, that's it, it'll tend to pop really forward. And there's a lot of stress on supraspinatus right there, that important rotator cuff tendon, stress on the AC joint, neck, you name it. So don't stay there for too long, Michelle. But the key thing to be watching for is as you drop down, that shoulder kind of pops forward. Instead of, Michelle, let's see how good you are. As you're coming down, you're really opening your chest and you're keeping a straight line between elbow, shoulder, and neck. That's the key we're looking for. Good, that's great, and that's perfect. Like if she stopped there, she's got it perfect. She went any further, she might suddenly lurch a little bit. Good, openness in the chest, and then pausing just for a moment there. You can see how that's in a pretty straight line. Just want to keep her chin tucked in. It's a good little stability drill for her, working. Fantastic. So that's the key movement sin to watch out for. Now, with the screen train, we're back into that airport controller, but we're probably more doing this forward one as our check of their biomechanical screening, all right? How they're getting impingement pain on this one, what kind of range, if they're really stuck here and also going, oh, it's a bit uncomfortable, then that's a real positive for that rotator cuff and that serratus not working very well. All right, Michelle, so we're gonna do some loosening. We're gonna get you lying on your side facing out. We can use this as a pillow. So now one of the key areas, and you'll learn a bit more about this on Rehab Express, is when you're getting impingement stuff, and that usually is on the pressing movement, like forward press, like chest press or overhead press, any kind of press, that's when the serratus needs to be really working well. But if you're getting impingement, it's probably deep in this rotator cuff that you've got a tightness that needs to be unblocked. As Rehab Express explains, it's usually, and even more like on the injury prevention screen when you do your 3-day full Rehab Essentials accreditation. All right, that's our most popular course for the last 12 years, all through Australasia, India, and Middle East is the 3-day Rehab Essentials, the injury prevention screen. You'll learn all about those sort of biomechanics of the rotator cuff and why the external rotator cuff group tends to become overworked, over tight, and then restricting movement and creating impingement. So this area here at the back of the shoulder, infraspinatus, teres minor, posterior deltoid, they're the ones you're aiming for with this technique. So you make a little fist, Michelle, into the ground. Yep, that's like her pivot point there. So move that one out of the way a little bit. So the movement we're going to aim for, keeping that wrist like a little pivot point, is high elbow. Okay, because if we can improve that range of motion, but inside the actual socket, then you're improving what we call internal rotation. And the net effect is that you've been loosening the external rotators, which are the grumpy guys deep in the back of your shoulder. And I'll make her wince without having to try, because everybody who's fit has some grumpiness in their external rotator cuff group. That's for sure. Okay, so I'm going to be putting a bit of pressure. I'll try not to be too vigorous with the kettlebell while she does a little repeated movement like that. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to stretch it, okay? Okay, let's just see if we find a spot that's not too intense. All right, how's that pressure? Okay, try gently lift that elbow a little bit, yeah, and then release. Okay, and again. So it's like we're trying to open up through just where the ball kind of should be moving there. Back it off again and up and down a few times like that. Give it kind of, 2 to 3 minutes, like a minute, give her a break, another minute. Don't have to spend long with it. It's good. We could try a slightly different spot. Are you coping all right? Oh, it's like I'm trying to stop her being able to lift her elbow. If she's able to do it easily, lifting her elbow, then I'm not really doing anything. My goal is to kind of restrict it, and in so doing, opening through these very tight hypertonic tissues, the back of the shoulder. We call them the posterior cuff. And on Rehab Express, you'll be learning a heap more techniques with the Posture Pro and the dowel. But grab a kettlebell, not too heavy, and just do a bit of this stuff. If they've got a bit of impingement, you'll be surprised how suddenly that screen train will feel good. And any kind of overhead press they're doing may suddenly like, whoo, feel smooth again. It actually can be quite good as a little hack. Okay, so we've done a bit of loosening there. We'll get you to stand up again. Right, so we're going to use the suspension trainer now as a follow-up stretching protocol for that posterior cuff, and that'll really improve their pushing technique as well as that screen train of the airport controller, okay? Let's get in and do that left-hand side, Michelle. Use the hand behind back, fingers are going to be kind of interlocked here. That should be just wherever it's comfortable, okay? Because she is going to lean away, so you don't want it to kind of feel all nervy or too uncomfortable. And then as she leans, she's going to reach with her opposite side forward so that effectively that's really opening through the back of the shoulder there. We're asking her to check that she feels it in the back of the shoulder or onto the side of the shoulder. Should never feel it in the front of the shoulder. Very much a stretch where you feel that opening through the back. Okay, so once that gets more supple, more mobile, that translates into better ball and socket movement on overhead press as well as front chest press. Good. The second stretch we could try is to grab that, yep, and then reach across your body and kind of almost lean towards me. Maybe not quite so twisted. Yeah, you got it. This is a slightly different way of opening through the side here. It gets a bit more posterior deltoid, but it'll still get some of that posterior capsule. You probably use that one to even squeeze that elbow into your chest. Last little thing to suggest that if a client's going, yeah, I don't really feel it, right? Common client thing. We then would say, why don't you lock that back at the same time? So almost try and retract the scapula, try and hold that there at the same time as leaning into it to see if that really gaps it a bit more through the posterior cuff. So that's a nice little follow-on stretch. The two go together. Done a bit of our loosening, all right, of rotator cuff. Now we want to get in and fire up the pushing muscles, and the key pushing muscle is that serratus anterior coupled with a healthier rotator cuff activation. So to do that, we'll get in and probably do our baby serratus. If you remember that exercise from the course, resting into the forearms, leaning forward, getting the client the feeling of pushing forward with their elbows. That's it. And then relaxing them back. Yep. Pushing forward, holding that forward position. That's the key sort of activated position. Now the client may feel it down here near their armpits. All right, it's kind of the front where that serratus anterior pokes out if you have your shirt off. You can just imagine that's what it is happening down through there because that serratus is pushing that scapula forward. And relax. Good. Pushing again. Make sure those elbows are underneath the body. She's working her triceps a bit because of where this is. So if a client's going, oh, my triceps are really hurting, you could move the strap a little bit if you wanted to. Then, when they've mastered that bit of forward and backward, we're just going to raise those elbows a little bit. That's right. That should be enough. Keep encouraging them to push their elbows towards the ground as they're bringing them up slowly. Cool. Back down, underneath, and then relax. Cool. Pushing forward again, and then reaching up. Great. She's doing a great job of kind of still pushing forward. That's key for serratus as you're lifting up. Then the scapula are not just protracting, they're doing this thing called upward rotation. You'll learn a bit more about upward rotation later in the MRC. Very good. All right, there's your warm-up for serratus. Great little warm-up for boxing. If your client's into boxing and anything with a lot of push, even like a sled push, anything with a lot of pushing, you want to make sure that serratus is really ready for the job. All right, then we progress to even just pushing. Let's just do some push-ups. As she's doing push-ups, we're checking that she's opening the chest nicely, but specifically as she pushes, she's also just gently gapping those scapula at the back. You want to see those scaps come apart nicely, not poke out. Watch out for a bit of a wing, okay? My scapula do a lot of winging if I want them to, so you'll kind of see that bony bit stick out if they're doing it badly. So if it's sticking out like that, probably regress it, so make them, get them a little more vertical, not quite so horizontal, or they may not even be strong enough for the push on that. All right, let's go again. Just check on a little bit more lean, that's good. Yep, to the straight line, perfect. And then reach beyond a little bit. And I quite like, if you want to make it a bit interesting, as you come out of there, then do like an opposite knee tuck. So kind of push out and then bring it up. That really fires that serratus a bit more. So opposite knee to chest, nice and vigorously. Drop down again. Just a little extra. Watch those shoulders. Come out, drop up. Yep, lift up. So you're really getting that whole diagonal anterior chain firing in unison from hip flexors through to your obliques, through to your pecs and so forth. Okay, got two little kind of clever drills for those shoulders that need a bit more kind of rehab-y stuff. They were the hummingbird. So if you can remember, Michelle, the little hummingbird, kind of just hover as if you're above the flower. All right, little movement, just that little kind of flicking movement. That's just the brain getting those rotator cuff coordinating and activating in unison to hold as much as possible that ball in the center of the socket. As long as they're getting no pain, that's the important thing. That's the hummingbird. And then we have the windscreen wipers. Okay. Even with a bent elbow? Well, if you did it with straight arms, I guess it's going to be more like serratus anterior isolation, isn't it? Which is good. But we might also get those sort of big sweeping, wiping movements as if you're, that's it. Lot of challenge for serratus, but also the rotator cuff, especially called the subscapularis. Subscapularis is a really important stabilizer of the front of the shoulder socket. So anybody who's ever had any history of dislocation, all right, actually pop their shoulder out, this kind of exercise, if it's safe for them and it feels good, really good for stabilizing their shoulder for the future. So now we're going to look at using a kettlebell or a small dumbbell to really get that sort of overhead press progression. So a lot of clients with niggling impingement issues or history of shoulder problems, they don't like overhead press. It bothers them, they're a bit scared of shoulder pain. So probably our best way to start would be flat on the ground and make sure we're really good at that chest press movement as a lead up to overhead press. So Michelle, if you're lying on your back, we'll just get that little bit of just coordination and training of chest press. So elbow a little bit away from your body. Yep. So if we're doing just chest press, she's pushing to the ceiling. Okay, nice straight arm. And then we have this drill called screwing the light bulb, all right? So she's reaching with her hand up towards, pushing to my dowel, that's it, and twisting the other way, that way. External rotation as she keeps reaching for the, reach for the sky, as she externally rotates. So she's trying to twist it that way. That external rotation through her arm really helps fire up that little serratus muscle. All right, and then she can return back down. Good. Let's do another rep. So we lock up to a straight arm, reach and screw that light bulb in. Hold it up nice and high. If she wanted to, she could hold it there and add in a bit of ab workout. She could extend that leg for me at the same time, get that ab working, so that whole anterior chain again, and then bring it back and return the arm down. So lots of little options if you start to think about how things are connected. But we don't want to forget the focus is on that really good protraction in this movement. Healthy chest press and a really good protraction for serratus. So use a kettlebell or use a dumbbell. All good. So now we'll get her to stand up. I'm going to start to take that into overhead press. So progressing into shoulder press, the more complex movement, it is ideal to keep it kind of away from the line of the body, so laterally or to in front. A little bit better to keep it just in front of the lateral line. We call that the scaption plane. Hands got to be directly over the elbow. And we're just going to get her to do a gentle push. And just finishing quite vertically, just to see how that feels. I mean, I would never do it this heavy with a client with a shoulder problem, but she's feeling confident for this. Key to a healthy overhead press is the simple thing of that elbow being underneath the hand. Never let the weight drop forward. Always insist upon bringing that elbow under and then drive up. That really helps that scapula come around and serratus and subscap working together. Cool. So there's our lovely overhead press technique. Got a couple more reps in you, or nah, take a break. So now we're going to get her to push up. As she's pushing up, I really want to make sure her thoracic sort of opens up and then coming down again. All right, so with my tubing, I'm timing that so as she's getting into the movement, really thinking you've got to finish with your chest high. Don't finish with a dropped chest with your chin sticking forward, coming down again. So we've kind of done chest press. We've done that sort of middle range, beginning to get used to overhead press as a movement. Now we want to toughen up that last phase, that really difficult part, fully vertical if possible, where that shoulder feels strong and comfortable. It requires a lot of coordination of the muscles. One little way to sort of help that come into place for a client is to use this for the upper trap. The upper trap should really contribute at the last part of this movement. So let's get into that vertical position. So you could call this one as well the screwing the light bulb into the ceiling and then relaxing it down. Yeah. So screwing the light bulb definitely means the thumb finishes pointing backwards. All right, if the thumb on any of these overhead movements is pointing forwards or even across the body, you're probably slightly at risk of a bit of impingement, being too internally rotated in the shoulder. So finish with that full external rotation. That helps serratus work. Okay, so one little way we can fire that up is to get her to, against this bit of resistance with a vertical arm, now punch to the ceiling and release. Okay, so she's got to go against the tubing. This really gets that bit of upper trap firing in a way that it really likes. So you might do, say, 5 to 8 little reps of that. That could be her exercise. At home, she could stand on the tubing. All right, some of this stuff needs to happen a lot. One more, punch it, that's it, really reach, make sure. That's what gymnasts do a lot of. Take a break. Gymnasts do a lot of upside down, doing all that kind of shrugging kind of stuff to get those upper traps really working. And then you'll often find, if you now take your arm overhead, that it's kind of like it feels super easy. Like, I don't know how you're feeling, Michelle, but it's like, whoa, it's like this wants to hang out up there. It's very activated, so it's kind of a good feeling for a client. And again, that's a nice little preliminary to more overhead press movement if you wanted.